Welcome to Episode 2 of Cover 3 Press Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Wiggs, and with me, as always, is my co-hosts, Jake Ramsey and Justin Samra. Today, we'll be going over big trades in the NFL, as well as a breakdown of the Raiders roster, including practice squad. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, guys. So probably the biggest news around the NFL right now, Clowney was just traded to the Seattle Seahawks for Jacob Martin and Barkevious Mingo and a third-round pick. I mean, Clowney, without argument, is a force on defensive line. He, 3 Pro Bowls in 3 years. I know he's had a lot of injury problems in his career, but when this guy's healthy and on the field, he's undeniably one of the best pass rushers in the league. He makes a huge difference. And I think Seattle won big in this trade, guys. And Jacob Martin and Barkevious Mingo, solid players at best, but definitely does not fill the shoes of the star power of Jadeveon, obviously. And Barkevious Mingo is probably on the chopping block anyways. And the third-round pick is decent value, but Jadeveon is definitely worth more than that. I think Clowney is probably, he's after the big new contract with Seattle. He said he was either going to Seattle or Philly. I feel like that put Houston in a real bind to try to trade him. And I think it was a big win for the Seahawks.
Yeah, so I mean, I this trade really comes down to one thing for me, and I think it's just mismanagement by the Texans. I mean, not having a general manager is just really showing that it's going to hurt the Texans in the long run. I mean, we'll talk about the Tunsill trade a little bit, but you need to have a general manager to look at all these big picture things. I mean, Jadeveon was the number 1 pick in the draft, and getting these two, I mean, you're getting 2 pieces right now and a third-round pick, but that for the number 1 pick, I mean, we just saw. I mean, a great comparison is the Khalil Mack trade last year. I mean, Khalil Mack was a 5th pick in that draft. Jadeveon was a 1st. Obviously, Khalil Mack has turned out to be better, but it's not like Jadeveon is some scrub, right? And I mean, the return on those players, I mean, and a lot of it has to do with the CBA and the contract. They can't extend him right away, but I mean, the Texans need a general manager to start looking at this big picture stuff, or they're just going to be screwed in the future, in my opinion.
I think Bill O'Brien is more, he's more playing for his job right now than playing for the future.
Exactly.
Obviously, the goal in the NFL anywhere is to win now. You know what I mean? But I think the Texans are taking that a little too literally with Bill O'Brien as the GM. I think it's scary, but I mean, it's kind of like the Raptor, what the Raptors did. I mean, if you can win a Super Bowl, it's all worth it. You know what I mean? And then if you don't, it's just like then you got
a disaster.
You got to deal with what happens. But if you're going all in, you go all in. You got to do it the right way,
Yeah. 100% agree, fellas. Literally what it comes down to is what you guys touched on is not trading Clowney soon enough. Essentially, hampered the value they could get back because the team cannot, re-sign Clowney right away. So he's pretty much going to test the market. However, the Texans definitely should have got a little bit more. If you look at it, with the CBA, how it's designed with comp picks, it's just as likely that if Clowney were to leave, with the money he's going to make on the open market, Seattle will get comped back a third, a fourth at minimum, I would assume. So really, they just traded Clowney for, a middle-tier young second-year defensive end, and Mingo, who was on the chopping block, as mentioned previous by Ramsey, Jake Ramsey. It just really just seems like a clear win. And, I can't wait to see Pete Carroll fire up Jadeveon Clowney because he's got all the tools. And, Pete Carroll brings the best out of his players. And him playing that Leo position is going to be a good match, I feel like.
It's going to be nasty. He fits perfect in Seattle's defense right now. Honestly, that's exactly what they needed. That was kind of a blessing to them that he wanted to go there, and they just it all worked out for them perfectly because they have a hole at that position right now because with Collier went down in training camp, and they just
and they traded Frank Clark too.
And traded Frank Clark, so that was already a hole. So this is perfect for them. This puts their defense up to close to an elite defense this year, guys. I think that they're going to be this helps them a lot, obviously.
I mean, I hear a lot of people like kind of talking down on the Seahawks, but honestly, since Pete Carroll got there, I mean, it doesn't matter who they've had. I mean, you look at a couple years ago, I mean, their roster was just filled with like nobodies. And I mean, obviously besides like Earl Thomas and their big name Bobby Wagner on defense, and all they do is win games. And I mean, you add pieces like this to that, I mean, they could really be a sleeper in that division in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
mean I'm an SC guy. I love Pete Carroll, but I've always have. But the one thing I really like about Pete Carroll is he gets the best out of his guys. You know what I mean? Like you said, Josh, they obviously had star power, but besides that, it's a huge drop off. And he just gets the best out of practice squad guys and undrafted guys that turn into solid players in the league.
Yeah, last year they lost a bunch of players and their defense is a little bit unknown, but they really provided to be a good young team. And people were worried because they lost Frank Clark to the Chiefs, but I mean, I would argue Clowney is maybe a better, well-rounded player, not as good as a pure pass rusher, but Clowney is elite versus the run, which a lot of people really don't bring up. So
Yeah.
a great deal for them, and be interesting to see if he resigns there in the long term eventually.
Yeah, so moving on from that, Texans were pretty active last weekend. They also went ahead and acquired one of the best left tackles in the game, and Laramie Tunsill from the Dolphins. The full details of the trade: Miami picked up 2 ones from the Texans, the 2020 and 2021 ones. Julian Davenport, second offensive tackle, and cornerback Johnson Batamosi. The Texans, as I mentioned, received left tackle Laramie Tunsill, wide receiver Kenny Stills, a 4th rounder, and a 6th rounder. So if anyone was confused as to the direction that Brian Flores and that new regime over in Miami is taking, I mean, this obviously proves they were active all weekend, many trades, but obviously this one mortgaging the Texans mortgaging their future to Miami. So Miami clearly playing the long game here. I mean, the one takeaway is the Dolphins are clearly tanking now. In the next 2 drafts, they have 4 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks, 2 third-round picks, with potential for comp picks as well. So I mean, just absolutely,
Stockpiling.
playing the long game. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Josh, Dolphins are clearly tanking. I don't not like it all in any team in the NFL. You just can't trade a franchise left tackle. You know what I mean? The guy's 25 years old, just came off his best year. Was honestly one of the top tackles in football last year. I like what they got. They had now 4 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks. I think they can definitely do some stuff with that in the future. But I just don't like 25-year-old left tackle. That guy's he's going to be a staple for you for at least the next 5 years. I just don't see a whole lot. Just don't like that on Miami's end. But on the Texans end, I mean, obviously, like we said before, if you're going to go all in, you got to do it right. So, they're giving up first-round picks for Laramie Tunsil's. That's exactly what they need. They have a hole at left tackle, and they even got the Dolphins were looking to dump Kenny Stills anyways, so they kind of just felt like they threw him in. So we'll see what he can do, but I think I don't know. I just don't like. I don't like trading top left tackles, guys.
I understand it. I think it's a kind of win-win for both, honestly. The only thing I really think it hurts the Dolphins is there's a report that their locker room would be pretty upset if they traded Laramie. But, after seeing what they got, they basically got more than what the Raiders got for Khalil Mack. Obviously, he's not as good of a player as Khalil Mack. But, protecting, they need to protect Deshaun Watson. That's the thing that you really got to consider. They don't have an elite tackle to protect him one more year. Who knows if this is his last year. I mean, you've seen what's happened to Andrew Luck more recently. Carson Wentz been banged up. Deshaun's been banged up in his career. You just got to protect the investment. And they got the best tackle they could get. And, they're willing and dealing for now. But, how long is a window open, So you got to take advantage of it with your quarterback. So I kind of understand it from that perspective. And, the Dolphins are fully loaded right now. similar path that the Patriots like to take. They like to load up more on, mid-tier draft picks, but, the Dolphins clearly knew, they weren't ready to win now, and they were trying to get as much as they could for their assets on their team, and clearly they thought, bang for their buck, this is the easiest way to get to stockpile up. So from both sides, I see it as a win, and, you got to protect Deshaun Watson. Next up, we'll be going over the Raiders roster. We had some surprise cuts that we didn't really expect. You heard our projection on the offense. Some movement as of more recently on the team as well. Some kind of headlines would be, 10 players are left on the roster from when Gruden, took over. A lot of hype was around Dawson Rush and worried about them getting claimed and should making the team. They both were cut to much of our surprise. But, as you tend to realize, there's a reason why they're playing late in these games. And, they're really not playing against the top tier talent. These coaches see them day in and day out. And clearly they were more right than wrong. Every team had the opportunity to claim one of these guys, and they both wound up on practice squads. Some here, some not. Touched on that in a few as well. Another headline would be the Raiders are the 9th youngest team after being the oldest last year. So that's really good. And then, probably the biggest news for all us Raider fans out there, I think we could all agree, our car insurance is back. We got Rodney Hudson re-signed, 3 years, $33.75 million, 24 guaranteed, which is the big number that really counts. So you would like to think of it probably as a 2-year deal, averaging about 12 a year. As a total, I believe he's only making $300K more than the next listed center. So really, a really low, set the marker type of deal. Didn't really have to break the bank for him, so that's really good. Good to have him back. Another news that just kind of broke today is Peterman, hit the IR. We also made a claim for Kaiser, and let's get more into it. Let's get down in the breakdown right now. On the Raiders' 53-man roster at quarterback, we'll start there. We have Derek Carr, obviously, starting, and then Mike Glandon listed as the second, and then Peterman, who was listed as a third, like I said, just got put on IR, so I'd imagine Kaiser would fill in that third spot. And, Kaiser's someone that, I kind of understand why they would make a claim, I guess. It is a little head-scratching to have 4, but now with the IR designation 3 on the roster. But, Mike Mayock really liked him coming out. I believe he was the second-ranked quarterback of that draft. He has a lot of tools, and so, I can understand it. And then, going into the halfbacks, the guys that we expected, Josh Jacobs, Jalen Richard, and Washington, Ingold as well. That was a big decision. We were happy to see that. But Keith Smith did really well, guys. You guys have any thoughts on that, that choice that the Raiders made, Ingold over Keith Smith? You guys want to touch on that a little bit before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, Keith Smith did play well in week 3 against the Packers, but I think Alec Ingold just kind of showed. Keith Smith went down with the injury in OTAs, and ever since Alec Ingold stepped in, I think he kind of just showed he's the guy. He's perfect fit for what Gruden needs in a fullback. He can block, he can catch, he can run the flat routes, he can kind of do it all. He can even, he had a lot of touchdowns too, rushing the ball at Wisconsin. So I think that was the smart choice, and going younger too is kind of the direction it's looking to, is what they're doing. So I just think that was the better choice there.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I'm happy about that Ingold. I kind of wanted to touch on the quarterbacks though. Just my biggest beef with it, with carrying 3 quarterbacks, is that extra roster spot. I mean, obviously, even if it wasn't Anthony Rush or Keelan Doss, as a lot of Raider fans wanted to see, I just preferred that they stick with 2 quarterbacks. I have no problems with the Kaiser signing, but in my opinion, once Carr goes down, as I mentioned on the last one, it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it obviously does, but I would just go ahead, carry Carr, Glennon, and then put someone on the practice squad. But for me, that third quarterback spot, I think it's just more helpful to carry O-line depth or D-line depth, or there's only 4 linebackers on the roster. So that was honestly one of my biggest gripes with the roster. Other than that, I mean, I didn't really have any problems like cutting Doss and Rush. They were proved right because, as you said, Mason, no one claimed them. But that was just one thought I had on the quarterback situation.
No, yeah, 100%. It's not like the Raiders are some sort of proven product. Like you're mentioning, maybe another offensive lineman. We're down a few. We have a lot of inexperienced guys below that. And then, mentioning pass rush, we had 13 sacks last year as the Raiders as a team. So, having an extra D lineman might have really helped. And then the linebackers has been a problem need as well, and just carrying so few. So, yes, definitely that extra roster spot, 100% warranted. I agree with you. They probably would only be carrying 2 if we were running the team. That just seems like the logical thing to do. But, you got to respect it. You got to, Gruden's about his quarterbacks, about developing. Yeah. And you got to, have them there and be taking reps to really have them. So that's kind of where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And then from a wide receiver position group, the Raiders decided to hold on to 6. 8, Antonio Brown as the starter, then Terrell Williams opposite him. Starting in the slot would be Hunter Renfrow. And then the next slot receiver behind him, Ryan Grant, held on to his spot. He looked pretty good in the preseason. J.J. Nelson listed second team behind Antonio Brown. Real vertical threat. He just recently returned to practice. And then we got Dwayne Harris winding up the group, the special teams ace. As mentioned before, a lot of people wanted Doss. But, from the playing time habits and starting and sitting, it was pretty clear that, Grant was probably going to make the team and that they really liked Dwayne Harris, obviously, old reliable. So, to the dismay of a lot of Raider fans, Doss, went cut, but he got through waivers and he decided to sign on with Jacksonville's squad. But as a whole, I really like the position group, and I'm excited to see what they do this year for Derek Carr.
Yeah, I think like you said, to a lot of Raider fans' dismay, they cut Doss, but I think the way they went here was the smart way. Doss wasn't really gonna play a whole lot, and obviously they're going to go with the veteran Ryan Grant, proven NFL player, and then they're going to keep Dwayne Harris over Doss because, Dwayne Harris is, like you said, special teams ace. He does a lot of things for the team that, are kind of just that don't, not a whole lot of flashy things, but things, things football teams really need. And, I think Keelan Doss has a chance to be a good player in this league, but just for what the Raiders need right now, for the betterment of the team, it was just the smarter move to keep, Harris and Grant.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love that the Raiders are on Hard Knocks, but I think Hard Knocks kind of distorts our perception of the roster. I mean, at the end of the day, if Antonio Brown, Terrell Williams, and Renfrow, and even, Grant and Nelson, if they aren't good, it didn't really matter if Keelan Doss was our 6th receiver or our 5th receiver. Reality is, unless everyone went down or, he turns out to be, one of the best undrafted players ever, he wasn't going to see much playing time. So I do see them going ahead and going with the proven guys, as you guys mentioned. But, Hard Knocks kind of leads you on to believe, Keelan Doss is the certified number 1, and he might be down the road. But, for right now, obviously, AB and Terrell Williams, Hunter Renfrow are going to be, headlining it for now.
Yeah, and a key thing to remember also, guys, he is not on the Jaguars' active roster. He's on their practice squad. So let's say an injury did happen to the Raiders right now. They could outright sign him, and I would imagine he would come with open arms, considering he would be guaranteed a roster spot at that point. So he's not on the Jaguars' open roster. He's basically a half free agent, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So then moving on, no surprise here. Raiders kept 3 tight ends, kind of what we expected, as we touched on in episode 1. Waller, who we're expecting a nice little breakout year. Foster Moreau, the rookie out of LSU. And then the kind of Swiss Army knife, Derek Carrier. Kind of what we expected from, as mentioned before. But as the next position group kind of unwinds, the offensive line, there was a nice surprising development that happened. We decided to hold on to Andre James. the he was tackle at UCLA, teammates with Colton Miller, showed the ability to man the center position very well, and I imagine he's got guard flexibility. That was a real nice surprise as an undrafted player. I thought he would be someone they could sneak under the practice squad, but obviously he showed out a lot, and so that was a nice little add. And then rounding up, the rest of the offensive line, of course, we got Rodney Hudson starting at center. Richie Incognito at left guard, even though he's going to be suspended the first few games this year. Colton Miller at left tackle and Gabe at right guard. He's hurt. And then Trent Brown right tackle. And then we also held on to David Sharp, Brandon Parker coming into his second year, Jonathan Cooper and Denzel Good round out the interior offensive line. It'll be real interesting to see, who the Raiders start, at right guard, left guard in the absence of Gabe Jackson and Incognito. But as a position group as a whole, as I mentioned in episode 1, I wanted them to hold on to David Sharp. I just thought he clearly outplayed Parker. I know you usually hold on to one swing tackle, but unfortunately, I just can't trust Parker right now. And David Sharp just looked, to me, significantly better as that one unwound. You guys have what's your guys' thoughts on this deep, versatile offensive line group?
Go ahead, Ramsey.
I think they definitely got to keep a few more guys given the suspension and the injuries. I like the keeping Andre that they kept Andre James. He showed a lot in the preseason. He showed he can play center and a lot of different positions. He's definitely valuable to have, and even if he doesn't play a lot this year, he's definitely a good guy to develop. And I think that's kind of their plan with him. And like you said too, Mace Brandon Parker did not play well in the preseason, and I like that they did keep David Sharp. So I think that'll be good moving forward for them for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you would probably prefer that at this point Brandon Parker's your swing tackle, but it's good to stay safe and keep that extra tackle behind Miller and Trent Brown. But similarly to Carr, if Carr goes down, one of those tackles goes down, it's gonna be rough. We saw it last year. Brandon Parker struggled, so hopefully those two starters should stay healthy. And strictly talking about the starters, I mean, once Incognito's back, once Gabe Jackson's back from injury, it should definitely be no reason they shouldn't be a top 5 offensive line. I mean, you got you got former first round pick, you got highest paid right tackle at the tackle positions, and then you got Incognito and Gabe Jackson and Rodney Hudson in the middle. That's one of the better interior offensive lines. So, I mean, I'm just excited to see them at full strength. But other than that, not much thoughts on that.
Yeah, if you got the highest paid center, the highest paid tackle in football, you would hope to be at least a top 10 offensive line. So, not to start any fires or anything, under anyone's feet, but you like to think Tom Cable has all the tools he needs to be successful, have an offensive line this year. So we'll see if he can get it done. It's going to be one of the biggest things that contributes to the Raiders' success, and it's going to be a key, especially in this division. We're going to see it week 1 with Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, one of the key matchups in week 1. So let's move on to the
wait, hold on. One more thing, Mace, on that. I mean, Tom Cable has to make this offensive line work like it did in 2016, because, I mean, we saw it last year. Obviously, last year was completely different. The talent was horrible around DC, but, I mean, he's not the best under pressure, and, I mean, Tom Cable has no excuse for this offensive line not to be good. So, just doubling down on what you said, I completely agree. Tom Cable has a lot riding on this season for sure.
Yeah, Justin, one thing that I was just about to say, I think kind of not even just for the O-line and Tom Cable, kind of almost the whole team and a lot of these position groups, kind of like the no excuse here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Positions are loaded, and I mean, if the receivers aren't performing, I mean, what excuses are you going to make? This is the best receiving core they've had, since Tim Brown
and Jerry Rice. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of these position groups, it's kind of no excuse. It's like you got to get the job done. You know what I mean? It's like there's really nothing you can say about it. Obviously, hopefully injuries don't come to play in a factor or something like that. But it's for the whole team, I feel like almost this is no excuse here for the Raiders for sure.
Yeah, 100% agree. Put up or shut up time for most of this roster. So moving on to the defensive side, defensive end listed at first team defensive end would be Cleveland Farrell, the rookie at Clemson, national champs. Starting at defensive tackle would be P.J. Hall. He's someone I'm really high on. There was a lot of rumblings about him being on the hot seat, possibly on the chopping block right there. And I just, I don't know what goes on inside the rooms and whatnot, but I just thought he deserved a pretty no chance for a second year. So he's listed as a starter. Next to him would be a big number 90, Jonathan Hankins. He's looked pretty good this preseason offseason according to reports. And then Josh Morrow briefly was just cut. Then the last day he's back. He's re-signed and he's listed starter opposite Cleveland Farrell. So expect him to play in rundowns. Second team would be Arden Key listed behind Farrell. And then interior-wise, we would have Mo Hurst and Corey Legent from the Chargers coming in. And then to round out the backup defensive ends, we got Benson, Mayoa, who was more recently with the Cowboys, and then Mad Max Crosby. So a lot of young guys, a lot of guys to prove stuff. And, it's going to be interesting to see how many sacks they can really roll out because, really just a really young group. Not one player really known for demanding double teams. P.J. Hall did get double teamed a lot last year, but you would like to see more people step up around him and to help to make the double team backfire. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean this position group, in my opinion, on this roster is definitely the most unproven at the very least right now. I mean, obviously, you got plenty of new faces. I would expect to see a lot of different combinations used by Paul Guenther, to at least start games. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see, Arden Key start a few games. He looked kind of good in the preseason. Max Crosby possibly start a couple games, see if Mo Hurst could get in there. I mean, I just think that there's going to be a lot of tinkering by Paul Guenther to get this defensive line to go because, I mean, last year was, let's just call it what it is. It was an embarrassment. I mean, 13 sacks, you're not winning anything with that. I don't care how good your offense is. I don't care how good your secondary or linebackers are. So, I mean, it's really got to be better. It really has to be. So hopefully those second-year guys, P.J. Hall, Arden Key, and Hurst can take a step. And then hopefully, Cleveland Farrell can live up to that fourth pick because he's really going to have to. So, we'll see what happens, but this is not a group that I'm particularly high on as of now, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, like you said, Josh, I think Guenther is going to use a lot of different combinations in the way that I think they're going to bring a lot of zone blitzes, use a lot of stunts, a lot of things like that to help these guys out because I don't think they have a real dominant pass rusher in anyone in themselves. Hopefully, Cleveland Farrell can develop into that, but that's yet to be seen. But I think, especially to start the season, I think they're going to definitely bring a lot of pressure and a lot of blitzes and stuff like that just to help these guys out almost so they can definitely develop pressure and help the back end out a lot too. So Worley and Conley aren't on islands.
Yeah, and mentioning about the different combinations, I know earlier they mentioned about possibly having up to a 10-man rotation. So, and you would like to think that all these guys are pretty close to obviously being on the same tier. So maybe they're gonna try to improve everyone by just keeping the bodies fresh and really having a fresh motor. Keep everyone hungry, and then once you see the first sack, hopefully it feeds into the next and the next. And you mentioned it earlier. You touched on it. Arden Key. He might not be listed as a starter, but
he's gonna play.
He looked like the best outside pass rusher we had definitely this preseason. You see him in the offseason working out, just really putting in work. I think he's just someone that's really beginning to mature. And we saw the shout out earlier from Jamal Adams saying that he's coming and that expect him to be a Pro Bowler soon. And he's showing in that burst, and he's got a plan when he goes out there.
Honestly, looking at it from the other way too, it's a lot of teams can't say it, don't play 10-man rotations on the D line too. It's almost a good thing too. You know what I mean? All these guys should be fresh the whole game, and gives a lot of different guys in there. So these offensive linemen are getting, they're seeing 3 different guys on a whole drive. You know what I mean? That can get confusing and stuff like that.
Yeah, everyone's a little different.
Yeah, like you said, Mace, I think this could be a possible breakout year for Arden Key. I mean, he played over 500 snaps last year, which was way more than he was supposed to play. But, Josh Mauer will start. He'll be the first and second down player. But Arden Key is going to be in there probably close to 90% all the third downs, I'd have to say. I mean, Max Crosby will definitely be in there too when he gets back healthy and everything. But I think Arden Key, if he can have a breakout year, that's just all the better for the Raiders. That'll help Cleveland so much too, because if Arden Key starts demanding double teams, it's going to free him up, and that could just make the whole D-line better.
Yep. I mean, and also touch on that 10-man rotation. I mean, you look at the Raiders when Khalil Mack was here. I mean, he was playing damn near 95 to 100% of all snaps. I mean, obviously Khalil Mack's special and he's on a different level than any of these guys, but that is not sustainable at all. I mean, you look at the Eagles when they beat the Patriots a couple years ago. I mean, even their best defensive linemen, and don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing, Jonathan Hankins to Fletcher Cox or, any of those guys to these guys, but they were constantly staying fresh. And when it paid off? It paid off in the fourth quarter when, they got in there and they could sack Brady, to win that Super Bowl. So I'm not comparing any of these guys to that, but I agree with the approach, and hopefully it pays off,
Yeah, it pays off week 20 of the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, like in February, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like stay fresh the whole season, have your best players in the field at that time.
Yeah.
So that I think definitely if hopefully all 10 of these guys can be consistent and productive, and they can have a solid 10-man rotation, and it's all the better for the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to the next position group, we got the linebackers. Starting at the strong side would be Tier Whitehead, second year with the team. Man in the middle would be an extension of Paulie G's brain and Vontez Perfect. And then at weak side, with somewhat surprisingly, so Brandon Marshall, we got Nicholas Mora listed as a starter. And then backing up that unit, we have backups Markel Lee, and then recently re-signed Kyle Wilbur, the special teams ace. So a little different approach here, only having 5 linebackers on the 53-man roster. But, I guess that really just tells the signs of the time, with a passing league. If worst came to worst, with, so much passing around, you could always just slide a linebacker in there in a pinch. And, as I mentioned, I'm personally really excited about Nicholas Morrow. John Gruden called him possibly the most complete linebacker on the roster. Don't get me wrong, he definitely has his flaws. But as mentioned, in a passing league, he is clearly the best passing linebacker coverage we have. So I'm happy to see him get a chance. And, with having all these big D linemen in front of him, you like to think you keep them clean and let them be able to run and chase down ball carriers in total.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an unorthodox approach, I feel like, keeping 5 linebackers. But like you said, Mace, it is a passing league. And, it was a surprising cut of Brandon Marshall. I was a Brandon Marshall fan, but I think that's a good thing for the Raiders. It shows that Nicholas Morrow beat him out, and it did this at a few different positions this year. Like they showed that they're not afraid to release veterans for the young up and coming guys. It really shows they're going to play the best player, which is I think that's the good thing the Raiders are leaning towards.
Yeah, I think. I like the fact that they're keeping so many safeties, because I think these safeties are going to be, extensions of the linebacker core. So, while I would like them to have, I don't even really consider Kyle Wilbur as part of the linebacking core, because I doubt he's going to be playing a whole lot aside from special teams. But you look at the Chargers, I don't know, I believe it was last year. I mean, at some points they were having like 5-6 safeties on the field at the same time. So you really just want the most talent possible on the field. And obviously, I think the safety core as a whole is a lot more talented than linebackers, just speaking strictly from that perspective. And like Ramsey said, it's a passing league, so the need for linebackers isn't as great. But I'm excited that Vontez Perfect is here, and hopefully Tahir Whitehead can continue on from the success he had at the second half of last year, because he kind of struggled at the beginning of last year. But we'll see. We'll see how it plans out. Hopefully they have a plan. Maybe pick up another linebacker. I know they were in the Kiko Alonso talks, so we'll see how that all pans out.
Yeah, very good point. This roster is fresh. The teams are still making moves. Aaron out, things around the league, and still possibilities to still expect a lot of movement potentially. And yeah, one of those safeties you could expect, in a pinch to possibly play some passing downs if we struggle would be a Jonathan Abram, in my opinion. He seems like a logical choice to go fill in the box and help out there in a pinch. So as a safety position group, listed right now as the free safety starters would be a Joyner Abram combo. As expected, I would expect Abram to play up top in nickel and dime, and have Joyner in the starting slot corner position. And then at strong safety, Carl Joseph in a big contract year. See what he can do. I'm excited. I liked him coming out a lot. Has struggled.
Did they pick up Carl Joseph's option?
No, they did not.
They didn't? Okay.
They did not. And Gruden said, to kind of his credit, I guess, now that, they still had plans for Carl. There's a lot of rumblings about him getting dealt. But, John Gruden called him a leader of the defense, and it appears that they're going to roll into the season with him starting. So let's hope he can build up of last year's positive year and get a little bit better and really become, honestly, potentially, a top 15 safety at his position, which would be, a valuable player to hold on to potentially. And it's possible, towards the end of last year, he started to show that he was making improvements. And then backup wise, we got Curtis Riley from Fresno State. He had 4 interceptions last year for the New York Giants. And then Eric Harris, a backup strong safety listed, former Canadian football player, real versatile, can play strong and free. And then possibly one of the biggest surprise makes of the 53-man roster would be Mr. How do you pronounce the boys? Dallin Levitt?
Not sure, honestly.
I'm pretty sure. I don't want to disrespect the man, but I'm pretty sure it's Dallin Levitt.
Okay, there we go. We'll have it. We'll roll with it. We'll make sure to check on that. But yeah, someone that really no one really had penciled in to make the team, and sure enough, he made it. And yeah, that's kind of I like to see that. That's kind of a good surprise to have, considering it shows they're just not going to care. They're going to keep who they want, and that's honestly what's important. So if that's the position group as a whole in the safety position.
Yeah, I'm honestly shocked, floored that Dallin Leavitt made the team. But I mean, he must have been making plays on special teams. That's about the only way you're gonna make the team at that spot.
He was killing on special teams this preseason. I didn't notice him much on defense, but he was flying down on punt team and kickoff team and making plays. And I mean, they're loaded on the top end. I think Joyner and Abram and Joseph are going to be in the game most of the time, given they only have 4 linebackers.
Yeah.
But I think they're showing that guys like Leavitt and Morrow, guys that probably weren't real expected to make the team in the beginning. I'm glad these guys are getting are shown they put the work in and getting rewarded, honestly, because it shows that John Gruden sees that and he's got a place for them. It shows that they're not just gonna play the veteran and the NFL starter.
Even at the beginning of camp, I might be wrong, but I don't think Curtis Riley even had a huge chance of making the team. I was assuming that they were going to keep 4, but I'm interested to see how how Paul Guenther incorporates all of these guys, because honestly, I have a feeling that a lot of you guys are going to see the field. Like, Curtis Riley, Eric Harris, they just extended, so we'll see how they incorporate it. I mean, I'm interested to see if there's packages where we got 4 or 5 safeties on the field. So we'll see. We'll see how it pans out.
I think it's really likely, like we mentioned, the kind of the trend is the safety is kind of the new Swiss Army knife. You guard playing the nickel a little bit, hopefully can guard over the top and then be able to enforce in the run game and be able to cover these backs out of the backfield. You see the Patriots kill people every week with those little dump offs, and best way to combat all these multiple formation sets is having versatile players, and arguably the most versatile player on the
Yeah,
defense is a safety.
exactly.
So definitely could see three safeties, four safeties on the field at once.
I mean, just given by the way the roster's broken down, I think you can just kind of tell that. You know what I mean? I think, like you said, Justin, they're definitely gonna. They have plans for Riley and Harris. I think Leavitt's gonna be primarily a special teams player.
Yeah,
Well, I think Riley and Harris will play this year, and I think there will be times they're gonna have 5 or 6, DBs, let alone safeties in the field. They're just gonna be a different look. It's kind of that college feel, but the NFL is definitely shifting that way, given the way the offenses are going.
yeah, and there was a big stress. A lot of reporters were talking about it. Even Mayock and Gruden mentioned it. Like they looked so slow last year. There was like, especially like the Chiefs games, even though the score might not have been indicative. I mean, it just looked like teams were playing at a different speed than the Raiders. And I think getting more DBs, getting faster on the field, I think that contributes to your play speed and covering running backs out of the backfield, covering fast tight ends, covering Tyreek Hill types of players. That you got to get speed onto the field, and like Mason said, I 100% agree that safeties are some of the most versatile players in the NFL. I mean, they're just physical freaks, which is I won't get too far into this, but I wish that they would have drafted Derwin James last year. But that type of player is that's the future in the NFL. So hopefully they're just churning, trying to get that type of player.
And like you said, team speed. It helps. They have to play the fastest team in the league two times every year. You know what I mean? So it's like their team speed had to improve from last year. I think they definitely did that.
Yes. And before we move on to the practice squad, my apologies. I did forget young Keyshawn Nixon, another undrafted player, made the roster at the corner position. So that leaves four undrafted free agents made the 53, and Andre James, Alec Ingold, AJ Cole, and Keyshawn Nixon. Once again, my apologies, but he was making plays everywhere out there in the preseason, and he made the team. So that wraps up the roster breakdown of the
You want to
53
go over
man.
the corners too, real quick?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Oops.
sorry. Oh yeah. Oh my God. I thought I just skipped on one. Oh, my bad, fellas. Yeah, we got Garen Conley and Darrell Worley out there starting, and then Isaiah Johnson, I believe, just got designated for IR, but
Yeah.
he's still with the team. Trayvon Mullen, who I expect to play a lot of snaps. He looked very good in the limited action. I could see him honestly starting by week 3. And then, like I said, I thought I forgot Keyshawn Nixon. Nope, I forgot all the corners, so he's on the roster. And then listed, who's on the suspended list, is Nevin Lawson. So, I'm really excited about Conley. He really had a breakout year last year. He seemed to be struggling a bit this preseason, but hopefully working against Antonio Brown every day now recently will help tune him up a little bit more. I'm excited about him, and like I said, Trayvon Mullen. I expect to take that second spot here pretty soon. And then, key designation here to remember is our starting nickel is LaMarcus Joyner currently. So that would be the inside corner on 3 receiver sets.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully this year, you got to hope Garyon Conley becomes that shutdown corner. That would help take a lot of pressure off of the rest of the defense. They like Daryl Worley. I'm not the biggest fan, but the coaches are high on him. I did like what I saw from Trayvon Mullen. And hopefully, Keyshawn Nixon just turns out to be that undrafted free agent that can step in. Like you said, LaMarcus Joyner is going to be playing in the slot anyways. But, I'm high on the secondary for sure for the Raiders, and big part of that is Conley. I saw big flashes from him, especially towards the end of last year, and hopefully Trayvon Mullen can learn from that, and they can just grow as a unit.
Yeah, definitely. Possibly some technical issues there, fellas, but basically what Justin was talking on was some question marks still in that secondary, but Darrell Worley is a quality NFL player, so we'll see how long he can hold off Mullen. Josh is excited about him, and we'll see. We'll just see how that develops. Obviously the secondary is really dependent on the pass rush. They're kind of, bound at the hip, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, I was never real high on Worley. I think Mullen will be starting soon, like you said, Mason. But Worley's definitely an NFL player and a solid player to have on the roster. I don't really like him in the starting lineup. And then Isaiah Johnson, like you said, is going to get IR'd. I'm happy Keyshawn Nixon made the team. Well, like you said, 4 undrafted rookies made it. That's really a tip of the hat to the scouting department. That's not you look. Some people might look at that and be like, oh, that's not good. They got some scrub. But that does not mean that at all. That means these guys were definitely overlooked coming out of school, and these guys are NFL players. Like, they made a roster, so they're solid players, and I think that's definitely a tip of the hat to the scouting department for sure.
Yeah, having all those undrafted guys, and so what does that bring about? I don't know, 13 true rookies on the roster, so it's just a lot. So that breaks down the final 53, man. Now, moving on to the practice squad, we'll just briefly go over it. Marcel Aitman, the second-year player at Oklahoma State, who had a nice Week 4 preseason. He's going to remain on our practice squad to develop some more. Quentin Bell, the 7th-round pick, former receiver at Prairie View A&M. Like to see him hopefully develop. He just seemed to be a little he has the measurables and the speed on the track. He didn't seem to play very fast. It's
Still a little raw at the position.
Yeah, definitely raw, but I'm happy he was able to get through. I'm happy with the upside. I'm happy he snuck through. And then Lester Cotton Sr., who I mentioned as looked pretty good during this preseason. They were able to get him through as well. Excited about that. And they got a rookie running back undrafted out of Missouri, Crockett. And then Rico Gafford, another familiar face, the former DB. Transfer. Yeah, played receiver, transition receiver this past couple years. He played really well in the preseason, had a nice little 55-yard touchdown pass. And then the secondary member, Mabin, Nick Nelson, the former mid-round pick last year, who had a really difficult preseason, but I'm happy he was able to come through too. Obviously, they feel he has NFL potential. And then Phillips, and then possibly the most sought-after player on our practice squad member would be Rush, the nose tackle, defensive tackle that made it. Some of us were surprised he got cut, but obviously he didn't make any other team. And he would be someone I'd expect him to be up on the roster here pretty shortly, especially with Jelly Ellis, going on IR, it appears. And then we got tight end Sobert from the Patriots released him. They actually just recently traded for him within the last couple weeks. So that pretty much wraps up the practice squad. And like I said, some guys to really look out for on there here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good sign. I think one thing that's a good sign is a lot of guys that the Raiders either drafted or signed as undrafted free agents are here. So that's a good sign. Marcel Aitman, Quentin Bell, Lester Cotton, even Anthony Rush. They technically signed him, before training camp. So that's a good sign. I know Demaria Crockett was supposed to, honestly, was vying for some playing time after the injury to Lamar Miller. So we'll see how he looks over there. So, I would have liked to retain Doss, but, like I said earlier with the Hard Knocks, the perception might be a little bit different in our minds as opposed to the coaching staff. So not a whole lot of thoughts, but also happy Marcel Aitman's on. He had a good end of the last year.
Yeah. And then touching on Doss once again, real quickly, as I mentioned, he is not on the active roster of the Jaguars. The Raiders did want him back on their practice squad. They did offer him the same as the Jaguars. I just think he chose the Jaguars because they have a more of a weaker back end, 53-man roster at the receiving core. So, like I mentioned, Doss isn't gone for sure. And at least he got to spend a lot of time with us during the offseason and training camp, so he would know our offense, if an injury were to happen, and we signed him within the next few weeks. So he's not gone yet, but definitely shouldn't have been as surprised as him not making a team. That's for sure.
Yeah. Ramsey?
Yeah. I think Doss just wants to chill out in Jacksonville a little bit, guys.
Enjoy the weather. You think he's getting a call soon?
Well, but we'll see. But I'm glad they kept Marshall Aitman. I think Gruden's high on him. I just don't think they had a roster spot for him. Like you said, Bell's raw at the position. I think he definitely has a ton of upside. He's definitely a low risk, low reward guy, or high risk, low reward guy. I mean, sorry, guys, high reward, low risk guy. Um, uh, Anthony Rush, he's definitely. I think he will definitely be on the roster. They never want to say anyone's going to get hurt, but like you said, Jelly's probably going to be IR'd, and then, someone's going to get hurt on the D line. It just happens every year. You know what I mean? So, he will be on the roster sooner than later, I believe. And then and actually, I just breaking here, guys. I want to touch on this real quick. Jacoby Brissett just got extended 2 years, $30 million.
Whoa, nice. Okay.
Obviously, I was actually looking at that earlier today because I was looking at mock drafts. I was thinking like, oh, the Colts just gonna go tank this year, try to get a QB. But I get, Jacoby played well for them last year for sure. So I in their eyes, he must be the guy for sure. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, 2 years, $30 million. It just seems they're trying to show him a little respect because he is the starter in the NFL. It's not like a groundbreaking deal. They're just trying to, show a little respect, a little class. I actually, really approve of that. I'm sure they can get out of it after this year. But, I mean, he's been a constant fixture there, handle everything like a pro with the back and forth of Andrew Luck's availability. And, happy to see him, get paid, at least somewhat like a starting NFL quarterback, which is what he is going to be this year. So I think, they still could potentially be in the quarterback market, but I just think, honestly, a lot of class shown by the Colts after they've been maybe getting beat up a lot right now for letting Luck get beat like a pinata and all the other things. But, right here, I just think that's just a show of a little bit of class and trying to pay a man a little bit like a starter.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a good move by the Colts, honestly, because in their minds, like, why can't they win a lot of games? Why can't they go to the playoffs? So, I mean, it's good to get that locker room support for Brissett and get everyone, sold on him being the starter. And, I think Mason hit it right on the head. It's it's just a move to kind of, they didn't have to do it, but it's good to show him that respect, because if the front office showing him respect, then the locker room's not thinking, our season's gone because Luck's not here. So I like the move.
Yeah, 100%. All right, folks. Well, that's going to wrap us up for episode 2. We'll be back here in the next few days, releasing another pod touching on college football, and then shortly after that, previewing week 1 of NFL matchups. Thanks, guys.
All right, see you.